Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 11th of May, 2025. I'm here in the podding shed. It's been another rather warm week and still no rain. We really need some rain. But this brings us up to the topic that's up for discussion tonight, mulching. Now, for me, I believe that mulching is as important as watering our garden. You can hear me talking a lot about mulching on the podcast and everything anywhere else because it is just so important. Feeds the soil, adds organic matter to the soil. It reduces the amount of watering we need to do. It reduces the amount of weeding we need to do. It's just so many benefits. But there's a lot of things that we can use for mulching, and I want to know what you use. Before we get into that, well, let's ask the first question. How many of you actually mulch your soil? I'm going to ask that question to get started off. Let's see a raise of hands if you mulch your soil. While you do that, let's see if anybody is out there. We've got Kate is there saying, good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Digwell, as requested, an easy one. Bonsoir, monsieur. Marache. It's not that easy. Good evening, my fellow vegetable gardeners in France. Thank you very much. The right pair plot has joined us over on Instagram. Lovely to see you. Welcome along. We're talking about mulching. Turbo Stream, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Scott from Seed to Table Plot 13. Good evening, all. Good evening to you. Jenny is there. Hello, everyone. Hope you are well. Another hot day. I've not been on the plot as it's rock hard and anything I plant will die. Hoping for some rain soon. Me too. Me too. Stuart Jackson, evening, Richard and Veg Army. It's raining. Whoop, whoop. It's not here, but lucky you. Lucky you. Nathan says, evening all. Good evening to you. Turbo Stream, no rain in Birmingham since mid-February. It has been that long. It has been that long here. Amanda is there. Evening all. Good evening to you. Anna Jones, evening gardeners. Good evening to you. Scott's raised his hand. Excellent. Gary is there saying good evening. Jenny raised her hand and says she chops and drops all year round. Interesting. Turbo Stream, I raise my hand to be a mulcher. Excellent there, Turbo Stream. Stuart Jackson, yes, I use homemade compost. Excellent. Oh, where were we? There. Kate, I love Strolch. Great stuff. We'll get into that in just a moment, actually. Anna Jones has raised her hand. Digwell, hello. Oh, talk, Ali. Oh, he over on Instagram, the right pair, which is Ali, says met Steve Digwell at Malvern today, and he shared a link to this podcast. Thank you very much, Digwell. Thank you very much, Ali. We have a bit of a chit chat, basically. Rebecca, good evening. Sat listening in the garden, potting on seeds. Don't worry, I have my headphones in, disturbing no neighbours. I'm not disturbing any neighbours. A conversation we had a few weeks ago. Adrian is there. Good evening to you. Amanda says, yes, I mulch, but not consistently. I could be better. Homemade compost, wood chip, grass clippings, straw, and a little chopped bits of trees. Digwell says it poured down here around 3 p.m. That was a lovely smell. Beddoes is there. Hey up, Fidgies. Good evening to you. And Digwell says chop and drop mulch. So let's get into it. So most of you, from what I can tell, do mulch. What I want to know, if you don't mulch, why don't you? Don't worry, we're not here to judge. We're a friendly bunch. We want to find out. We believe that everybody has different styles of gardening, and we explore all the different styles of gardening. And as I said, I do believe mulching is an incredibly important part of gardening. I believe that it saves us a lot of time, but it also feeds the soil and makes us have better soil, which can only be a good thing for everything that we do, especially if you're like us. We're growing lots of vegetables, and that will turn into, well, when we grow vegetables, we're taking away a lot of nutrients, and that leads us to produce better, or deplete the soil is the word I'm looking for. But mulching for me takes the best out of it. The best, in my opinion, and I'm going to ask everybody else what their opinion is. For me, in my opinion, the best mulch is compost, well-rotted compost, homemade compost, or even bought-in compost. That is the best mulch. But what is your favorite mulch? What is your go-to mulch that you like to use? Your favorite mulch? Um, let's go through a few comments quickly and then I'll add a bit more. Turbo Stream says, I missed you today at Malvern Digwell because I didn't go. I didn't go either. It's a shame. I wish I could have gone, but I didn't. Stuart says, I know it's off topic, but I raised £333 this Saturday for the brain tumour charity. We hit £20,000. Fantastic, Stuart. Fantastic. Nicola says, hi, Richard and all. Good evening to you, Nicola. Lovely to see you. Digwell says, you can send me the £5 finder's fee later. Excellent. Digwell says, I was looking out for you so I could avoid you. I use rapeseed straw, horse bedding on potato tubs. Now, this is actually something I'm going to be discussing on tomorrow's podcast because I am using, I've said this a lot, straw a lot as a mulch this year. My preferred one would be compost. I would love to use compost as a mulch. The trouble is to produce enough compost to really get where we want to be. I can't do it. Not without bringing in outside resources. I could bring in compost, but I worked out it would cost about £300 to mulch my entire allotment, and that's every year. So that's not something I see possible as doing. Horse manure and other things that we can bring in as well does help to produce this compost. But what I'm using this year is straw a lot because it's so much cheaper. £3.50 for a bale, and that'll do 3 beds of mine. So I'm using straw a lot for that very reason. Moving on, Adrian says, I have a lot of sheep's wool. People say that you can use as a mulch, but I think it makes a mess. That'd be an interesting experiment, Adrian. I do use sheep's wool quite a bit for various things, but as a mulch, it'll probably keep the slugs and snails away as well, wouldn't it? I guess. Turbo Stream says, I use leaves as a mulch, plus top dress with compost I make. This year there was a quantity of grass clippings, so I mulched on top of the leaves and compost. See, I like this. So Turbo Stream, we've discussed this many times in the past. Turbo Stream has a regular delivery of leaves to his allotment, and he mulches in the autumn his entire allotment with all these leaves, which is great. You know, that's the time you want it. They rot down, they feed the soil. And then from what you're saying, on top of that, he'll add grass clippings when they become available, and then compost on top. All that organic matter, the worms are going to pull down into the soil and feed the soil. So it makes a lot of sense. Nicholas says, thumbs up all. Yep, give us a thumbs up. I bet you did too, Digwell. Anna says, fantastic. Well done to Stuart. Well done, Stuart. Well done, Stuart, from Turbo Stream. Everyone's saying well done to Stuart, and absolutely well done, Stuart. Jenny says, as my allotment is bare and not been grown in for a couple of seasons, I can tell the soil is poor. It needs mulching for a couple of years for the soil to improve. This is exactly what I'm saying. It does need mulching. My soil isn't too bad, but it can be improved with a mulch. I am a no-dig gardener, so I do try and cover all my soil with compost instead of digging it in. And just making that blanket of compost does make the difference. I come back to what I said earlier. Making enough compost is tricky. Scott says, I mulch with compost. I have been watching Back to Eden, and he uses wood chips with amazing results. Not sure it would work in the UK, though. So wood chips is another thing I've used in the past, particularly around my trees, my apple trees and things like that. Worked very, very well, I have to say. But again, we had a delivery of wood chip on the allotment, which made it a little bit easier. If I had to buy in wood chip, it would not be feasible or financially viable for me to do. However, there are websites out there that if you want to get some wood chip delivered, you can go on these websites, and some local gardeners, arborists, tree surgeons, they can deliver wood chip to you. So there is, if you want wood chip, that is definitely an option. Nathan says, quite expensive, but I like strolch as a mulch. Yeah, I like strolch, actually. So strolch is a sort of refined straw, chopped up into quite fine spaces. added minerals and things like that. I've used it in the past. It was about £20 a bag, I believe. One bag did one bed of my allotment. So again, I came back to the fact that that would cost a lot of money to do my entire allotment, and that's where I struggle. Maybe cheaper than compost, but when I did use it, I did get some really, really good onions. So it is definitely well worth if the investment if you can afford it. Chillyville says, evening all, just back from a scout camp, so no gardening for me this weekend, but Kate's been busy on the allotment. Excellent, excellent. Anna Jones says, I use leaf mold, straw, grass clippings, and our homemade compost as mulches. So I also use grass clippings as well. Every time I cut the lawn, particularly on the allotment, I'm using that grass clippings as a mulch. In fact, that would be one I would prefer to use instead of straw because it's free. The trouble I have with it is you need a lot of it to cover the allotment. It all comes down to the amount that we need. But I've always said it's better to properly mulch half a bed than to poorly mulch a full bed. So definitely something to bear in mind. If you don't have enough to do an entire bed, do half a bed well, and it will be all the better for it. Over on Instagram, Brickney Claire has joined, and Annie Hart 3037 has joined. Welcome along, lovely to see you. Hope you are well. Digwell says, I'm using my old straw bales for mulch this year, even having a go at the Digwell Stout method of growing spuds. Same as roof stout, but digging a hole for the spud, not just laying them out. See, I'm doing exactly the same there, funny enough. So I'm not using last year's straw. I've only started doing this year. But my potatoes are growing so well at the moment. But I mulched them, I've dug them in the ground, let them poke up, and then covered them over with straw, let them grow again, and I've had to mulch them again this weekend to double the amount of straw that we need. And I think we're going to have to do it again in a couple of weeks' time. It won't be long, however, until we're harvesting our first early potatoes. But Ruth Stout, American lady, she came up similar to Charles Dowding, except her belief was that she would use whatever materials she had available to mulch the soil, not just compost, particularly things like hay, because that's what she had available. I believe Charles Dowding actually looked at her before using compost too. And again, I think it is a great way to do things. Chillyfield says another another Strolch vote here. It is expensive, but does a great job. Excellent. Turbo Stream says, for the first time, I think my soil is the best it's been. We're lucky that the trust who own our plot drop off leaves every autumn so I can mulch. You know what? This is actually a good point to sort of, in my eyes, explain why I think mulching is so important. And it is about adding all that organic matter to the soil, and it does improve the soil. And even Adam Frost, the first thing he said at this talk I saw him a couple of weeks ago say is mulch the soil, look after the soil. The soil is the most important part of our gardening journey. And compost, what happens? We mulch it, it breaks down, it adds all those nutrients to the soil. Worms come along and they pull it down into the soil as well, and it improves soil, which gives us better drainage, better moisture retention, better nutrients, less weeds, and less loss of water through evaporation as well. Big fan of mulching. What have we got? Digwell says, I've had mixed results with Strolch as a slug deterrent, but great as a mulch. Down to my last 2 bags now. Fantastic. Turbo Stream says, under this year's mulch, the soil is still very damp. Considering the lack of rain, it's remarkable how damp it is. The bits I've not mulched are bone dry and cracking now. And actually, this is something I meant to say as well. Nature, as Turbo Stream has already alluded to, nature in the wild, trees drop their leaves going into the winter. Those leaves rot down in the soil around the tree, and it produces its own mulch. And that is what we want to replicate. And use of leaves as Turbo Stream is probably one of the great ideas of doing that as well. Good evening, all, says Rob. Welcome along. People saying hello to Rob. Digwell says maybe wood chip be better for permanent planting beds. I agree. Actually, that is something I do agree with. Wood chip is better for permanent planting of beds. It is a bit more permanent, wood chip. I've used it on some of my other beds actually, and it does work quite well. Growing parsnips in them last year. Wood chip, well rotted wood chip, I should add, is going to be a good thing. A good compost anyway. It's going to help add to the soil. It's when it's not well rotted, I would use it on under trees and things like that, if you can get hold of it. One of the things you've got to remember, or so I'm told, I'm no scientist, but as wood apparently rots down, it robs the soil of nitrogen. I don't know how true that is, but that's something, maybe an old wives' tale, but that's something that is often said when it comes to using wood chip as a mulch. I don't know how true that is. When Adrian says, when the wool gets wet and starts to rot, it goes into a gooey mess. That's not ideal, but if it's doing its job, then it can. If it's doing the job as a mulch, then that's a good thing. Nicholas says, you need my space, Richard. Then you can mow the fields and broken down wood chip from failed trees. I do need the space that you have. I would love 3 acres. I would have such a good time. I would have such a good garden as well. Turbo Stream says, I brought some strolch, but only to mulch around newly planted plants as a slug barrier. It's been so dry this year, I will save it for a wetter year. Yeah, well, this is what we're hoping for. Nicholas says, I bought strolch this year for French beans, etc., to help ward off slugs. They killed mine both years. Quinton Crisp and dried, whatever. I think that's all. Hope you're well, Adrian. Scott says, I mulch my potatoes with straw and grow them in it also. So it does work. It does work. I'm intrigued a lot with straw this year. Stuart says, been out in the garden most of the day. Now some of my beds need to mulch tomorrow evening. I hope to stop the weeds coming back. Lots of comments, isn't there? Oh, may have to miss a load because I think I'm so far behind what you are saying. So apologies. I'm going to do that. Apologies if I have missed your comment. If it's something important, then please do repeat what you said. It's only because this is a quite a good topic. I think everybody is talking about it. So what other materials could you use as a mulch? We've touched on compost, which is the best. Wood chip, of course, straw, leaves, cardboard is something I use a lot in the winter. What else do we use? Leaves, straw, hay you could use, lawn clippings. Anybody else got any other wool was something else? Any other things that we could use as a mulch? Anything that you've got? So, the right pear plot has joined us over on YouTube. Welcome along. Digger's just had a mini lightning power cut. Lucky you. Well, I say lucky you. That's not actually quite good, but at least that means you might be getting rain. Turbo Stream says, I tried wood chip for paths. Oh, what a mistake. If there is any, I will add it to the compost bays instead. It's causing a mess now. I will have to rake it up and scoop it. Fair enough. The right pear plot says, we used wood chip for our paths and ended up with a harvest of morai mushrooms. That's a good thing. I can't eat mushrooms because I'm allergic to them, but that is a good thing. And, put your paths to use. Over on Instagram, Rumour Farm has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Nicholas says, green waste compost steals the nutrients too, Richard. I found when I first set up my raised beds 4 years ago. I did not know that. I did not know that at all. Tomostrom says, this is an important comment. Thank you very much. Ian, yes, nitrogen is depleted from the soil if you use wood chips. I would put a plastic liner before using wood chips on top to keep the plastic down. We're talking about a mulch, really. I guess if they're established, it's not too much of a problem. Nicholas says, broken down composted wood chip. Yeah, absolutely. Scott says, amazing. I'm always checking the wood chips piles for mushrooms. We really do need to get a mushroom expert on the podcast at some point, don't we? Stuart says, could you use fine gravel around trees and shrubs? Thanks, team. Yes, you could. I mean, that is a type of mulch. It's more of a permanent mulch. I've used sort of gravel and stones in some of my potted plants and things like, let me pull this over, my lava light I have here, which is perfect for borders and great as a pot topper. That's going to act as a mulch as well. Not going to feed the soil so much, but it's going to reduce the weeds and reduce evaporation. But stones can get warm. Of course, we've got shell and earth as well, which is another good one to use if you can as well. Ian says, don't use hay. It's full of grass seed. 1 year's seed, 7 years weed. That is one of the problems. We're talking about all the different options that we could use as a mulch, and hay can be used. I believe that was what Ruth Stout used them all, but weed seeds are definitely a problem with it. I found hay caused a load of grass growing in the beds, absolutely. And we used lalama beans to mulch a bed last year. Too many grass seeds, so didn't use again. Anna Jones says, I use horticultural grit on pots, both to save on watering and keep vine weevils out. But tiny gravel works its way into the soil sometimes and needs replacing often. Digger says, I'm good with mushrooms. I'm a really fun guy. Oh, there's always one. Yeah. Hay, yes, I used hay at my peril. Yeah. So what you're saying is none of you are fans of using hay as a mulch. I guess that's actually a good question. What wouldn't you use as a mulch? What has been a problem to use as a mulch? Idaho's joined. Hello, Richard and everyone. I use bark mulch in the veg garden. I use large gravel in landscape areas because it keeps the weeds down. That's a good point. Good point. Gravel in landscape areas probably better than anything else. Bark mulch is a good one as well. But we haven't mentioned bark mulch. Turbo Stream says, I bought a few bags of cow manure 1 year. Again, big mistake. The next year I had massive amounts of weeds. I will stick to leaves on my own compost for mulching. Interesting about the well, I guess well-watered manures. That's another good mulch we could use as well. But yeah, I'm looking for some that you wouldn't use. Jenny says, I used hay bales. I didn't find there to be too many seeds, but I think my planting style helped with that. Digwell says, a problem mulch, black weed suppressing membrane. I'm with you on that. I am using it in certain areas in my greenhouse, for example, on the allotment, but black weed suppressing membrane, I think, is a problem mulch. Now, it doesn't rot down, so it's not really going to add anything to the soil. And it needs weighing down, because what happened, my neighbours, who are not on their plot anymore, they had a load of it on their allotment. It got blown in the wind over into my gooseberries, and to this day, I got these tiny little ribbons. I've shown it to you enough times. Tiny little ribbons of black plastic in my gooseberries, shredded up and causing that problem. So black weed suppressor membrane, I'm with you on that as well. What else got? Ian says, I've used horse manure from the field and that was too full of weeds seed. Best to only use stable manure. What's the difference between stable manure and horse manure then? Is it because it's got that straw in, so it's rotted down, it's got hot and rotted down and killed any weed seeds? I think that's the important thing. Weed seeds need to be killed, so they need the composting process to get hot enough to kill weed seeds. Kate says, I just tried shell and earth on my hostas and so far so good. Looks great too. Rob says, we used to get free horse manure and we are still paying for it with all the weeds. A lot of people are saying this with horse manure as well, isn't it? I think we got couch grass so bad on our allotment through horse manure, but I believe if it's rotted down, composted down properly, it shouldn't be a problem. But I could be wrong. Digwell, the weed membrane is at 3 layers thick in places on my new plot. Also, people have left it and buried it under the ground. That is not a good thing either. Plastic and carpet as a mulch. No thanks. Carpet is banned on our plots. Carpet is banned on a lot of plots, actually, because it is so bad. The chemicals and things like that are in the carpet. And it's when it gets left in the soil as well. as Digwell's alluded to, that is where it becomes a problem. People come along with their what do you call them? Cultivator, and that's not the word I'm looking for. The thing that chops up the soil. I can't think of what it's called, but they come along and it gets all wrapped up in that and causes a lot of problems. I can't think what they're called, but yeah, I'm not a fan of leaving stuff on the soil. It needs to break down, in my opinion, to be used as a mulch. Nicholas is stable fed and on horse on stable fed on feed and a bale of hay and shave as beddings. Horse in field eat a wider range, including weeds as well as grass and hay. Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you now. Digwell says cow manure can be used sooner than horse as the weed seeds are digested. Just need to cool down. And the right pear plot says, yeah, we put all manure on the compost first now and use the following year. That's exactly what I do. Use it the following year. You let it rot down and then use it the following year. I got chickens here at home, so I get a lot of chicken manure, which I'm letting rot down, and we'll use that next year. Scott says, I bought a bulk load of compost delivered last year and wasn't happy with the results. The beds now don't look like they was mulched at all and full of weeds now. I do think, this is the trouble with buying in compost. You do need a high quality compost. It is expensive as well, let's face it. We can't beat about the bush. We only have a finite amount of money we can spend on these things. And if you're growing your own food, you're generally doing it to try and save money. Not always, but most people do it to try and save money. If you're spending £300 a year on mulch, on compost, it's not really saving that much money, or is it? That's a question. That's a question. Jenny says, I have to use the black plastic as I physically can't cope without it, but I hate it. The black plastic has its space. It's if it needs to be used correctly and not left in the ground, not used to grow on top of, but used correctly. Ian says horse manure from the horse field is the one that has grass seed and the horses eat grass. Stable manure, they eat hay. Okay, thank you. I've learned something there. Turbo Stream, if you do use plastic membrane, then use a flame to seal cuts as it doesn't shred. Absolutely. Rotavator, that's it. Rotavator was the word I was looking for. Rabbit bedding and poo can't be used straight away. Andrew says it's a rotavator too. Thank you very much. Rotavator, that was the word I was looking for. I knew somebody would pop me right. Digwell, I now use a weed flamethrower to get rid of those black membrane strands. They are annoying, aren't they? Trouble is, if I do that on my gooseberries, I'm going to lose my gooseberry bush, which I don't want to because it's a good bush. I'm just hoping that we can cut away enough of it each year that it soon won't be there. Turbo Stream, let's not forget green manures. That's a good point, actually. Green manures, I do use a lot of green manures particularly over winter, as a bit of a, would you call it a mulch? I guess, yes, you would call it a mulch. So green manures, I tend to sow the seeds, let the plants grow, they shade out the soil and do all the goodness, and this dominant plant sticks through. One of my favourite, of course, Phacelia. Now, when we want to plant it, what I tend to do is just cut it all down, leave it on the soil to rot down into the soil. So that definitely makes it a mulch as well. Yes. I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah. And it adds organic matter to the soil. Also good for making compost too. Scott says, I'm close to Newmarket, so lots of stables, but I wouldn't trust what chemicals are in the horses system. Yeah. Black plastic is okay as long as it's easy to remove. Nicholas says, I'm having to redo all my beds as rotted after 4 years. We'll fill with straw, totted wood chip, and mushroom compost, all bulk buy. Yeah. Nicola, 3 acres is a lot of land, and she can't grow in the soil because of high levels of arsenic. So a lot going on there. I think the secret there is to make enough compost. It's tricky. Oh, well, my allotment is in Newmarket. There we go. Ian says, council green waste should be weed-free as it's composted in windrows. It's not, though, is it? There's so much bad stuff with council green waste. I don't know how it can be really sold. It's called a soil biome destroyer, rotavator. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, rotavator. It's definitely... they're not the best things, are they? They do cause a lot of damage to soil structure and stuff. They have to incinerate manure from the racehorses in Newmarket. Didn't know that. Didn't know that. That doesn't surprise me. Though. Got an itchy nose again. That happens every week, it feels like. Nicola, I'm going over to paving for the paths so wood chip doesn't need replacing every 2 to 3 years. This is the important thing. I do think when it comes to gardening, we do have to try and make our lives easy, try and save money. Again, this is why I'm a big fan of mulches. Mulches, they save money. They do save money. They reduce the amount of weeding, so less time spent weeding. They reduce the amount of watering we need to do because they reduce watering, and they feed the soil, make our soil better. So definitely one there. Anna Jane says, what about seaweed straight from the beach? Can you use that? Yes, you can, but you can't necessarily plant straight into it. So I use seaweed a lot. I'm not far from the beach, as you probably know by now. And especially going into the autumn, I try and collect some seaweed when we go for a walk with the dog on the beach. Now, I tend to use seaweed more on my asparagus bed. I just lay it straight on my asparagus once it's sort of dying down and let it rot down on top of that. But you could actually add it to the compost bin. You can also add it to beds. In fact, the Jersey Royal potato farmers over in Jersey, they used to add horse manure and seaweed to their potato beds because they believe that's what made their Jersey Royals so good. So you can add seaweed. The thing you got to remember is that it could contain a bit of salt. Now, for most plants, it's tolerable because it is in quite small doses. But if you're using a lot of seaweed, that salt could potentially build up. Just to bear that in mind. Even if it's weed free, it's not glass and plastic free. Talking about council waste. Andrew says, loving the podcast, by the way, mate. Keep it up, man. Thank you very much. We will keep it up. We've got no plans to drop that microphone at all. Well, we got Turbo Stream. I have field beans to cut down, but they are in flower. I will cut them down soon and leave it on top. This brings me up to chop and drop, actually. Chop and drop is something I've not really looked too much into. You guys have mentioned chop and drop quite a bit to me. And as I understand, it's a permaculture technique where you basically are chopping all your waste materials up into fine pieces, a bit like running over it with a lawnmower and then just leaving it on the soil. So if you're pruning back a fruit bush, for example, you take that pruning, you chop it down and you leave it on the soil. I believe, and I've recently seen Charles Dowding hoe off a load of spinach that, because of the weather, he felt needed hoeing off. And he just left the tops on the soil as a mulch to rot down into the soil and add moisture to the soil as well. Again, I've not had much experience with chop and drop, but if anybody does have any experience, let us know. What have we got? I tried seaweed, but it all dried and blew off. That is the risk. That is a risk. It does dry off quite quickly and blows away because it can become quite light. Again, that's, excuse me, why I tend to do it over the winter. Seaweed needs soaking to reduce the salt. I used to mulch with sedge peat. Not seen it for years. I've never heard of sedge peat, so that's something new to me. Chippenham is so close to the right pear plot, sorry. Digwell says, my local council compost is awful. Not too many weed seeds, but just about every type of waste you can think of. Absolutely. Absolutely. Turbo Stream says there's not much seaweed in landlocked Permanent. Yeah, I mean, this is a case that because I am so close to the sea, I try and get everything that I could possibly use. This is my stance these days. Everything that I could use as a mulch, I'm going to use. Over on Instagram, a Scottish guy that threads is there. But everything I can use as a mulch, I want to use, especially if it's free, because I'm too tight to spend money. The right pear plot says to Stigwell, think it's everything people throw in their green bins, not always garden waste. Yeah. Jenny says, please check with your local council before harvesting seaweed. Some varieties and beaches are protected. You can get a fine if caught without permission. So that does depend, actually. So if you are collecting seaweed that's washed up on the beach, especially after a storm, it's not too much of a problem because it's already dying. It's not connected. It's if you go out diving to collect seaweed that it becomes more of a problem. If it's washed up on the beach, you're technically okay. I think there is an element not taking the mix, shall we say. But if it's washed up, it's already disconnected. It's dying. It's basically like a plant that's had its roots cut off when it's like that anyway. Turbo Stream, I'm not aware of Birmingham selling green waste compost. You might look into it. Right pair plot says, Jenny, I checked and allowed to take a couple of bags as long as it wasn't attached to anything. Yeah, as I say, if it's washed up, it's fine. Ian says, collect leaves from the woods if you can and make a leaf mold. I watched Terry King's video and he makes a ton of compost every year. Now, I do talk a lot about collecting leaves in the autumn. One place I don't say, or I don't recommend you collect them from, is a wooded area, because it's in the wooded area, it's natural to find the leaves there. It's doing their job. Where I personally collect my leaves from, and I've contacted my council to get permission to do this, is local recreation parks where you get green spaces. You might get the odd tree planted. The council generally come along and suck up all those leaves anyway, and you can get quite a few that way. For me, if you collect them from the woods, you're just taking it from where it needs to be, whereas on a recreation field, they're going to get cleared away anyway. Rob says HGV does chop and drop every year over his... Who's HGV? Over his spent potato compost. Never heard of HGV. Sedge Pete is from Somerset. Okay, I've learned something. Digwell says, how about the green algae in the canals? Actually, green algae, we get algae in our water troughs, and I think people do use that as a mulch sometimes. It's quite small, but it can be used. Rob says, shredded paper as a mulch. Yes, or cardboard shredded. See, I don't shred the cardboard, I lay it down as a mulch, especially over the winter. Just lay down flat, no sellotape or anything like that. Basically suppresses weed. But it rots down into the soil, which is one of the main reasons that I like to do it. But I don't shred it. But another thing that I've seen other people do, newspapers, they take a newspaper and page by page, they lay that down as a mulch as well. And that works, I believe, quite well. A couple of pages thick would work quite well. In my hand garden, I shred prunings and mulch around our shrubs. Right pair plot says, yes, Rob, I used shredded paper from the office I work in. Unfortunately, sometimes it contained plastic from windows, envelopes, and loyalty cards. Excellent. Turbo Street says, probably die from all the pollution from the canals, Digwell. Nasty water. Council green waste can have weed killer in it, says Nicola. Lots of comments. You really do like this conversation tonight, don't you? I do agree. It is a good one. I'll tell you what, I think what we're going to do, I'm going to gather my thoughts quickly because it's getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's go to this week's mission. Okay, last week you set me the mission to make a bean frame, and that's what I've made right here at home. We're going to have some Belotti beans growing up this particular frame. Now, I've used bamboo cane as the main structure. I said last week that I don't like to use bamboo canes. I've got hazel trees growing on my allotment that I coppice every year. But I have bamboo cane here at home, and it's quite old, but it's still useful. So I've just made the main structure out of bamboo cane, just to make a rough idea. I had a couple left over, so I've added those in as well, but I didn't have enough to put as many in as I would like. So what I've then done is I've got some string in extra places running from top to bottom, which I've then tied to a bit of string running all the way down. And there we go, that is my bamboo cane, my bean frame built. Just got to get some beans in it now. Indeed, that is last week's mission that you set me. Is that mission accomplished or mission failed? You let me know. Nice little beam frame, I think. Your thoughts on that? I want to say I'm not going to ask you to set a mission this week. Next week, I will be coming to you live from a hotel room. I think it's near Derby, Nottingham Derby Way, if I remember correctly, with Lee from Skinny Jean Gardener. So Sunday, I'm going to be spending the day travelling up to there. We're doing our school tour, getting 10,000 kids gardening that week. So we're starting off that way. Then we're in Manchester, Birmingham, down at Stewart's area, and in Colchester on the Friday. So I'm going to be busy the following week. But that basically, I'm not going to have any time next weekend to make the videos, the mission videos, to cook along. We'll still be able to do a rant, but those two, I'm not going to have time next week. So I'm not going to ask you to set that, but the week after, we're going to need one. Turbo Extreme says HGV is homegrown veg on YouTube. Oh, okay. I did not know. I don't watch much YouTube, as you know. Nicholas says, I used to have 5 large sycamores and got lots of leaves, but I had them cut as a bit too close to the house. You know, I had a sycamore in my garden when I moved in, and the first year we got loads of leaf from it, but I cut it down because it just the wrong tree for our garden. Same with the ash tree and the elder tree. And I miss those leaves. I do miss those leaves. Apple trees and things like that just aren't producing the same amount of leaves yet. Jenny says, best leave the woodland as it is habitats. Many churchyards will be glad for you to collect and take the fallen leaf matter. I didn't think about churchyards, but that again, that makes sense. Digwell, I used my pondweed, but it can hardly be used as a mulch as there's so little of it. Well, excellent. And Rob says, I would never collect leaves from the nature park we go to. Too much dog poo in it. Gloves or some of those big old like rake things we used to get that go on your hands and collect leaves as well. Lots of ways around it. Mission achieved, says Nicola. Thank you very much. If you ever do get weed killer in compost, then report it and sue the supplier by law and by product of places where it is used. It has to stay on the farm or horse stud. There we go. So yeah. Mission accomplished, but watch your eyes on the cane ends. Yeah, I'm going to put bottles on those. Digwell says, and it is now health and safety in HS&E law, so guilty until proven innocent. Interesting. Rob says, Richard, do a drinking challenge. No, I cannot. Not when I'm going into schools. Getting kids that actually reminds me next week I think I'm going to be joined by Lee, as I said, coming from a hotel room. I want to talk about getting kids into gardening and your thoughts on that, just as we're getting ready for the week of the school tours. 10,000 kids into gardening, but we want to hear your stories about that, how you got your kids into gardening or your grandkids, or how you got gardening as a kid as well. All those sort of stories we want to hear. You'll find out more next week. Anyway, back to mulches. Anna says, we always had the algae from our pond to our home compost. Also, the sludge from the pond bottom is excellent stuff as well. Yeah, I believe that some of the most fertile ground from the ancient Egyptian periods used to be from when they dredged rivers. They would use that dredging from the bottom of the river as like a mulch, basically, but it was some of the most fertile soil they had, I believe. Now, I don't know. Again, I go back to the fact I'm not a scientist. I'm only going off what I read, but it does make some sense. It does make a lot of sense. You think all that fish manure that's gone into that soil has built up over the years. Got to do something, hasn't it? Nicholas says, my ducks get to eat the duckweed, etc. They don't have access to the pond I collect. They go mad for it. Do like a good duck. Do love a good duck. Digwell says, I miss my koi pond filter sludge. I used to have a big pond with 3,500 worth of koi all died in a thunderstorm. How awful, how awful. But back to mulches, back to mulches. So the use of mulches, I think we've gone a lot into why we use mulches. But I also believe there's a correct way of doing a mulch. Now, many people will just throw down, let's use compost as an example, just throw down compost on top of the soil and be done with it. That's fine. It works. But I actually believe there's a better way of doing it. And the first thing that I always do before mulching is clear any weeds. Pick out, particularly the couch grass on the allotment, try and pick out as many weeds as I possibly can. My belief there is that if we leave the weeds that are already growing, they're going to have an easier time to grow through our mulch. It's just not one of the easiest. It's just gonna have an easier time to grow through the mulch. But after I've then weeded, I then go and give the beds a good soaking of water. Now, I do say that when we add a mulch, it locks in the moisture. But if the moisture's not there in the first place, we need it to be added. So I give it a really, really good soaking of water, and then I add my mulch. And things like compost, as I said, it's my favorite and my preferred mulch. We just lay it on top. But what you've got to be careful is that you don't get the mulch, in terms of compost anyway, too close to the stems of your plant, except for things like potatoes and tomatoes that can root from the stems. Other plants, particularly melons and pumpkins, are known to rot away from that point. So I try, and if I'm using compost, I try and keep them away, particularly trees as well, keep them away from the shrubs, the bushes, the stems, the main growing plant, if you like. Not far, just a couple of centimetres away. But then what I find with things like straw, it's not so much of a problem. Straw, wood chip, and etc., etc. It all helps keep that moisture level there. So for me, that's how I mulch. It's really quite easy. Clear the weeds, water, throw it on, and keep it away from the plants. What's your, or do you have a method for mulching? Let me know. Digwell says, when you do a soil test, silt is one of the parameters measured. Yes, silt, exactly, because it is such a good stuff. But the risk is if you dredge regularly, you can disturb life in that pond or in that river. But sometimes it does need dredging. Rob says, one of our cats brought home a 9-inch koi. Lovely. Yes, always weed first, says the right pear plot. Absolutely. It makes sense, doesn't it? It just gives it the fighting chance to defeat any of those weeds. Digwell says, I was so upset that I did not restock, took the pond apart and started gardening. I was the same with motorbikes. After having 2 motorbikes stolen, I gave up motorbiking. Bedo says, when you meet Lee, ask him if he remembers VIP member 5. He often talks about you. He misses you a lot, Bedos. He talks about you all the time. The right pear plot. I mulch at the end of a year, so ready for plants to go in after. So this is actually a very good point, actually, the time of year for mulching. Now, most people, when it comes to mulching at the end of a year, particularly with compost, because that's generally over the winters when we dig the soil, or if we're no if we're not no diggers, we would dig over the soil in the winter. So a lot of people will mulch at the end of the year, and I think that's one way of doing it. I tend to use the green manures at the end of the year, or things like leaves or cardboard. However, if it's compost, I tend to feel it's better to apply the compost at the spring, just before you plant, because there's a risk that over winter the rain can wash all the nutrients out of the compost, and I think the plants need the nutrients in the spring. So I tend to mulch in the spring with compost. But of course, when we are in the growing season, like now, plants of potatoes planted up, we need to mulch those. So I'm doing that as we go as well. A soil always needs mulch, in my opinion, every time of the year. Anna Jones says, Heron got all our fish. We have water lilies now. Lovely. Digwell, did they get hit by lightning? Says Idaho. Good question, actually. Ian says, definitely water as it locks in the moisture. Absolutely. Jenny says, has anyone used rough coir as a mulch? Not as fine as normal coir. I've not heard of rough coir. So coir, basically coconut husks. That was a lot of people were moving to that as a good form of compost. A lot of people debate whether it's any good or not. I've had reasonable results with it. I can't say it's the best, but I've had reasonable results with it. I much prefer other forms of compost, but coir does have some benefits. I'm going to sneeze in a minute. I can feel it. Here it comes. Is there going to be another one? Excuse me. It won't be a live stream without a sneeze at some point, wasn't it? Rough coir I've not heard of, so interesting to hear more on that. Toby stream. I mulch in the autumn after rain. I usually give the plot a hoe first. Yeah, always good. Don't like coir, says Rob. Fair enough. And Digwa says, off topic a lot. Why do people spend thousands of pounds on a bike, car, etc., and then not spend £5 a month on a sim-based tracker? Because when I had motorbikes, sim-based trackers didn't exist. If I had one now, I would, but back then they did not exist. The right pair. When spring comes and the weeds grow, we can weed once more. Yeah, true. I thought the nutrients didn't wash out. It's a risk. This is just my theory, and it's how I do things. I'm not saying it's anybody's wrong. The thing is, I tend to mulch when a bed is empty, or I tend to add the compost when a bed is empty. So if trying to think, my garlic comes out in July, beginning of July, I will then add a load of compost to that and then plant it up again. But if it's going to be empty over winter, that's when I don't tend to mulch with compost. I tend to use cardboard or green manures. They go into the bed where you want them. It's different. I say different things. Jenny, I can chop and drop all year. This year, I'm growing lots of extra plants to harvest the foliage for, lots of chopping and dropping to help my soil. Yeah. Chopping and dropping is, it's a natural form, isn't it? I guess it happens in nature. So I don't know enough about it to really have my own 2 pence on that. So I've got to experiment with it. Idaho says, where would the nutrients go? They get washed in further into the ground, I guess, or they become soluble and things like that. Not leaching out somewhere else. Yeah, as I say, it's my theory. Charles Dowden says the rain doesn't wash away nutrients. He mulches in December. Nature doesn't wait till spring to drop its leaves. It's a good point. It is a very good point. I think, but the rain does wash the soil into the ground. I don't know. As I said, I'm not a scientist. I'm just using my logic. And as I've said at the beginning, we all do things differently. Anybody... and there's no right or wrong way. Well, there is right or wrong ways, but none of our ways are right or wrong, is what I'm saying. Those sneezes scared our cat. I'm sorry about that, Beddo's cat. That's what I thought also at the right plot. Oh, yeah. There should be a load of grass cuttings in June after No Mow May. Is anybody doing No Mow May this year, actually? Because a lot of people aren't bothering. It's a myth they leach out. Again, I'm no expert and no scientist. It just, to me, I'm on a clay soil, so I'm no expert. Well, I have to get my microscope out and really study it one day and see if there is any difference. Digwa says the koi died of suffocation as it was a thundery night. Low barometric pressure, air fizzed out the water, and a power cut stopped the aerator. Interesting. Rain would wash away a man-made fertilizer, hence why farmers spray when it's dry. Yeah, that does make sense, actually. I have mulched over winter one year, and the results weren't as good as when I've mulched in spring. Interesting. I mean, it's yeah. It'd be an interesting experiment to see what makes any difference. Each to his own. It's what works for you, Richard, and that's okay too. Absolutely. Yeah, each to their own. Absolutely. This is the point. Each to their own. I know I know there'll be a lot of people who will disagree with no dig gardening, for example. There's a lot of people who are very anti no dig gardening because they've spent years digging over their soil. But there's a lot to be said for it. Ah, I needed that. I needed that. Where were we? Toby Stream says, I'm no expert as I'm from Birmingham. Digwell says, the nutrients only wash away so far as they get absorbed by other bits of the soil compost. It'd be an experiment, isn't it? We'll have to figure out how we can carry out an experiment, see if it makes any difference. Jenny says, no mow May is not great. It should be no mow till October to allow the bees, etc., to complete their breeding and feeding. I am no mow all year round at home. See, I do mow my grass areas here at home all year round, but I have very few grass areas, and the grass areas I have are paths. So for me, no mow does not make sense. But I have nature areas that are there all year round, and I'd sooner have nature areas all year round than no mow May. And I think that's the point that a lot of people are coming up with. Nature is there all year round, and things like that. All depends on your substrate, says Digwell. Yeah, it's got to be an interesting experiment. There's got to be a way we can test my theory or things like that. Sorry, I missed one. Stuart says, no mow May. Quick question. Where do all the insects go in June when you, start mowing again? Exactly. This is the complaint a few people have. It's all very well doing a month of no mowing, but when you come back, you've sort of taken that food source away from loads of insects. Oh, got a rant coming on. This might be next week's rant about this. But the food source quickly goes. These insects then have no home come June. So it sort of defeated the point. I think the idea was always that, well, if it worked for May, some people might do it for longer. Was always the idea behind no May. I also think there are problems with grass verges and places like that when it comes to insects, particularly for dog walkers, because we found that when our councils didn't cut the grass as much, we were getting what are they, ticks on Roxy, because of the long grass. So there were other problems going on as well that needs to be questioned. But I'm all for nature areas. I'd sooner have a nature area all year round. I've not mowed in 3 years, but the ponies have grazed most of it. Natural lawn mowing going on. Anna Jones, isn't that how rivers go green? From nutrients washed off the land? Probably more from non-organic fertilizers, though. This is it. I guess the more you think about it, the more we analyze it, because there are high levels of nitrates and things found in rivers that have washed off farmers' land, but farmers' land may not have anything holding the nutrients into the soil, and it might also be the artificial feeds. I don't know. I think this is where the washing out of nutrients into rivers comes from. Yeah. Scott says, I find a freshly mulched beds better for sowing seeds directly in. Yep. Again, the mulch holds on to that moisture for that a bit longer as well, so it does last a bit further. Digwell says, no mow May is a North American concept that works there. Someone decided it would be good here, but our wildlife cycle is a bit different, so when we mow in June, all the frogs and toads are homeless. Exactly. Turbo Stream says, I noticed my new plot neighbour dug his plot over in the spring. His plot is now covered in weeds. No dig definitely works. I'm totally with you. No dig does work. But it does need managing. Same as wildlife areas. They all need managing. They're not easy. They need managing. No mow May is one of those social media fads that catch on. Best to mow or not at all, I think. I don't think fad is quite the right word, but I do think there is There are, I can see the thinking behind No Mo May. I can see what people were trying to do, trying to encourage natural wildflowers and feed the bees, etc., etc. But as I've said, I'll have daffodils, tulips for those early flowers. We've got vegetables that are in flower. Looks like it's about to rain out there, actually. I've just seen. That'll be nice. But we want to have flowers all year round. Wildflowers are great. I mean, for me, it's vegetable flowers. I want vegetable flowers all year round as well. So, yeah, a fad, not quite fair, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Rebecca says, I say we should all just grow more flowers all season for the wildlife. Yeah, totally. Uh, as well as veg, as veg. I mean, my point. We've gone off the topic of mulches. I think we've exhausted that one now. But I think the thing we've got to remember is that we need, even as vegetable gardeners, we want the pollinators to pollinate our tomatoes or courgettes, etc., etc. So we need the wildlife to benefit our gardens, and this is what I tend to do. Everything is there to benefit my vegetables. Councils like No Mo May to reduce costs. Again, that's fine if they do it all year round. That's the thing. They've got to do it all year round. Andrew Norris has joined, evening all just back after a gar's cutting fest in my meadow. I've left lots for nature, can't cut it all, and I kept that part as a wildflower meadow. So you're not taking part in No Mo May, Andrew, then I take it. Nicholas says we had heavy rain all night on and off this morning. We have not had rain since February, but it looks very dark out there. I was going to go water the garden when I finish this tonight, but I may not need to. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Scott says, I think having a small area that is never mowed and left messy is better than No Mo May. Yeah. Yeah. Stuart says, No Mo would be better if every gardener just left a metre square for wildlife sorted. Yeah. Again, you know me, I do like wildlife. I feed the birds. I have bug hotels. I have hedgehog houses. Some of those that you've sent missions for. We've got a wildflower area. I've got a nature pond. All that for me is what we want in our garden. We want to help. And I'm going to put same in on the allotment, actually. It's all what we want in our gardens and our allotments. And a metre square is all it needs. More is better, but we have to fit our gardens around our style as well. Friends just turn up and says Jenny, fair enough. You got just talking. I know, Sister Andrew, just got in time talking about No Mo May. Yeah. Tobo Stream says, our council have reduced the mowing frequency. Last year they left the grass. Lovely flowers popped up. They came round and mowed them all. I was surprised how upset I was after they mowed. There are some lovely flowers in grass areas. And the trouble is, I think as I do this, I tend to cut my grass quite short. But I cut it regularly and I don't let the flowers pop up in my grass. I'm guilty of that, but that's because my grass for me is a source for mulch. It's a source for compost material. That's what I want it for. And to walk on. So it's not really a grass for nature, but it is paths. Digwa says, I don't want pollinators to pollinate my tomatoes. They are a perfect flowers and pollinate themselves. I'm using that as example, Digwell. You know how it is when you go live and chatting, you're just trying to think of examples. But yeah, plants that need pollinating, we need the insects in to help those. But not just pollinators as well. Let's not forget there's some natural ladybirds and things like that that are predators to some of the pests. I hate the word pest, but some of the pests that we have on our plants, ladybirds and things like that, are natural predators too. So we want to encourage those in as well. Ian says, I don't understand No Mo May, as in June the council slaughtered the grass, and what bugs Valeria May will be dead and gone in June. Exactly. Andrew says, no way to No Mo May. There is a large area I leave and notate all the flowers that come up in the year. I mean, let's face it, if everybody had the space, everybody would probably have a wildflower garden. Who realistically has the space? Tobo Stream says, I make a woodland garden and intend to plant lots of native flowers as I plant it. Cool, cool. Bedo says, forecasts say we have to wait until tomorrow night or Tuesday morning for some rain. Yeah, borage and comfrey, they love it too. Yeah, borage, comfrey, got loads of that. Love it. Loads of bees as well. Just had a downpour here in Malvern. Lucky you. I want rain. I know you, mate. Just ripping the piss. I know you do. You should see what he says to me in private when he rips the piss out of me as well. Those conversations cannot be shared. So I get the impression that a lot of you are not impressed with No Mow May, which does make sense. But you're not impressed for the right reasons. This is interesting, really interesting. On that note, Nicholas says, I have the space for a wild area. Of course, a lot of mine is as too much to manage. The thing is, I mean, a lot of people say that a wildlife area is an easy to manage. It's not. A wildlife area still needs managing. Like meadows, a wildflower meadow, it still needs cutting down for those seeds to be dropped into the soil for next year. There is a certain element of management that goes into wildflower areas. It's not as easy as people let us believe. Digwa says, I have numerous flowery things to pop in around the plot. No idea what they are because I'm a floral virgin. I got a few marigolds. They go in a lot around mine. Marigolds and nasturtiums as well. I'm with you, Nicola, and farmers are encouraged and I think paid for wild areas at the edge of a field. They were when we were part of the EU. I don't know if they still are now, but I could be wrong. In the olden days, before we had tractors and things, a lot of farmers would grow, would you call it wild areas, but a lot of trees and hedges around their fields that nature used, hedgehogs, etc., because, well, it was extra income for the farmers. Apple trees, I mean, the cider apple trees. So the story of cider apple trees is that they were often planted around the edge of the fields as the boundary marker, and then the farmers' helpers would pick the apples, often eat them for their lunch, hence the term ploughmans, and then they started making cider out of it, and that was where cider was born, as I understand it. I'm paraphrasing a lot because I'm trying to think of the story off the top of my head, but that is where it comes from anyway. Right, I tell you what, let's go, because it's quite a long video. It's not best video, this one. This week's cook along, because time is getting on upon us. Let's go to that quickly. Apologies for it being so long and boring, but you wanted it, and it went very, very badly, this recipe. Okay, so this week you want me to make a blossom onion. So I've been researching a few recipes. I'm going to do this in the air fryer. And most recipes I found call for one large onion. Well, I didn't have one large onion, so I'm using 2 medium onions. I'm sure that will be okay. What we're going to do is just cut the top off, the growth end, leaving the roots on. We just want to peel away some of these, the outer. We're leaving the roots on at the moment because from what I can tell, that's quite an important part of this recipe. But we do need to get rid of some of this outer skin. Easier said than done. Okay, what I'm going to try is what we've got to do next. So to make the flour, what we have to do is sort of cut it. We do it like so. Then we'll go halfway between the two. And now what we should see is just not so much cut the base off, just there we go. We still left that root end in place, and that has meant that that skin that we don't want to eat has came off a little bit easier. So what should happen now, this comes apart sort of like a flower, but stays intact, which is why we leave the root on. I may have needed to cut that a little bit better. There we go, that's starting to, there we go, they're starting to make this sort of blossoming flower. Okay, sort of there, so let's pop these to one side. Now we'll bring over the batter. So I've got a cup of flour in here, we're going to add to that a cup of milk, one egg, we'll grab a fork and give us a good mix. Make a nice bit of batter. Then we're going to want to add some seasoning, so pepper, that's about enough, salt, got some garlic granules we're going to add to this, we're going to add some oregano, and I've got this chipotle and lime mix as well I'm going to add, which actually is starting to go a little bit lumpy, so it needs using up anyway. Should add nice chipotle, chili and lime, and it smells absolutely delicious, I've got to say. So give it one more mix. There we go. Now we take our onion flour, our blossom onion, and dump it all in. Make sure it's completely covered, so I'm getting spoons and stuff on here. Sound effects galore tonight, isn't there? So I want to make sure it's totally covered with this batter. There's quite a bit of batter actually. And now, because we're going to cook this in the air fryer, which I've got just here, I'm going to put it on our tray, like so. I hope I'm doing this right. We're going to spray some oil on this. I think if we just open it up a bit more actually, we might be able to get some more of this batter inside it as well while we're here. Yeah, why not? Why not? We've got a lot of batter to use, so let's use it all up. Going to make a complete and utter mess of this kitchen, but never mind. Right, all we got to do now, spray this with some oil, which I've got just here. And we'll put this in the air fryer for about 25 minutes. Right, this is going to beep in a second to tell me it is finished cooking. Any second now. There we go. There we go. So let's have a look and see what we got. I don't think that looks quite right. Batter's not stuck to it, has it? Let's give it a taste anyway. Actually doesn't taste too bad. A little bit burnt. Nice bit of lime coming through now. But not the best. 8 out of 10 I'm going to give that. Not the best, but I'm glad I've done it. Yeah, not the best. It's something I think I can work on in the future and try and improve that. I like the idea of it, and I liked when I was watching YouTube videos and looking at recipes. I thought it was going to be quite an easy and different way to use up some of those onions, but they failed miserably. I have to admit, we don't have a deep fat fryer. I think if we had a deep fat fryer, it might have been better, but we don't have one. And I think there's lots of things I did wrong. But this is a great thing, isn't it, about cooking? When something goes wrong, we can practice and practice until we get it right. On their notes, talking of chefs, Scott says, I have found growing veg easier than trying to establish a wildflower meadow. I have found the plant/flower just take over in a few years. Yeah, it is not easy to deal with a wildflower meadow. It's not easy to get established. Over on the Instagram, Annie Hart says that newsflash, it's raining in Worthing, which is like the next town over for me. I'm hoping we're going to have some rain soon. I really am. I'm amazed. I can't work out if it's raining or not out there. It would just be nice. Turbo Stream says farmers could get a grant for wild margins. I watch a channel called Harry's Farm. He gets paid more for that instead of food. It's wrong, isn't it? Andrew says holly was also planted as a boundary marker since they kept the leaves in winter. Yep. And Scott says fried onion dishes like onion rings and this dish I find disappointing unless you go full geek and semi-dry the onions first. Makes it crisper and stays crispy when battered and breaded. Okay, I'll think about that for next time. Anna Jones says we should get back to using the fields for food, not paying farmers for leaving them empty. The thing is, the farmers were paid so much in grants in order to keep the cost of food down, in order to, because food is a necessity. We don't like to, if we paid, like, let's take milk. I reckon if we were to pay farmers a fair price for milk, we would probably have to pay something like £6 a pint. So they always had these grants and things to keep the cost of food down. But it's led to this predicament that they're now not growing food. It's going into other things. And this makes me wonder, what can we do to get the farmers growing more food? Scott says air fryers have the wrong name. Convection oven would be better suited. Wet batters don't work well in them. No, they don't, do they, actually? Turbo Stream says, agree, Anna, completely mad by the government. Yeah. Digwell says, I don't have a deep fat fryer, just fill a pan with oil. Yeah, the trouble is that's a lot of money to spend on oil, you know. But it's something we'll try in the future. I wanted to do a deep fryer version and see if it worked. It didn't. We'll see what happens in the future. I really should practice these recipes all week, shouldn't I? Hey. Scott says, so true, Richard. Without mistakes, truly new recipes wouldn't be created. Absolutely. So let's have a quick look at your photos before we go to my rant of the week. I've got to move this screen over here. These are photos, of course, Actually, all these photos came in on our Facebook page. So if you want to share your photos, you can post them in our Facebook page, or Facebook group. Sorry, you can send them to me, etc., etc. But they are your photos. Now, Ian, who I've seen in the audience tonight, he shared this photo of his calamondin, and he was after some help. First of all, he wanted to know if the calamondin is edible, which it is. Tiny little things, but they are pretty sweet. I can't remember what else he was asking, but general citrus care. I do like citrus plants. I've got a citrus tree that needs repotting this week, so that's something we're going to be talking about later. Digwell has, I've spelt this really badly. Digwell's car has become a horticultural TARDIS, in a sense that it's fitted in so many young plants into that little car. I think it was off to a plant sale, if I remember correctly, but there's a lot of plants in there. It's amazing what you can fit in cars sometimes, isn't it? Now, this is Chili Kate's plot shot for May. I will get my words out tonight. Each month, I ask you to take a photo of your plot so that we can see how it comes together. Every month, Chili Kate shares it with us. And I've got to say, it's good to see the progression through her allotment. Now, Benno's got some humour going on here. He claims this is a photo that his neighbours took of him and his partner on World Night Naked Gardening Day. I feel sorry for the neighbours, don't you? Lawrence has been asking about tomatoes and whether it's best to prune or not, whether we've done any experiments. And this is something I'm thinking that we might have to experiment with. But I'd love to know, have you experimented with pruning your tomatoes or not? I've been reading or seeing something about two-tiered tomatoes recently. Lawrence has also asked about eco ways to warm the soil of the greenhouse. And we came up with a few options. And that's something we came up with. And then we'll see if there's any more out there. Jenny had to dash off last week, like she had to do this week, to collect this beautiful herb planter. I've got to say I'm quite jealous of it because it looks fantastic. Even came with a few free herbs as well. Now, finally, and that bit of Digwell's humour this week, he ordered himself a Domino's pizza, and this is what he got. I fancy a pizza now after this, but I'm not going to have one because I'm trying to lose weight again. Excuse me. Now, please do keep sharing your photos. You can post them in our Facebook group, send to me via social media, or email me, richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. Lovely photos, as always. Thank you so much for sharing your photos. We genuinely do love to see them. We want to see more. Please do keep them posted. Where were we with the comments? I just lost it. Oh God, I've just shut up loads. I swear sometimes my mouth's just given up. Right. Digwell says air fryers are just mini fan ovens. Yep, they're probably right there. Well, you are right, actually, aren't you? Scott says a pan of oil can be dangerous for the forgetful, and it's where you store the oil after use. Yeah, absolutely. Idaho says, I agree with Anna. Over here, some farms in the Midwest get money to grow hundreds of acres of corn to turn into ethanol to add to petrol, so it's not even used for food. Over on Instagram, Annie is laughing at some of those photos, which I don't blame her for either. Scott says, yeah, very good, just very good ovens, 360 hot air. Yeah, that's what an air fryer is, isn't it? Idaho says, well, look at the cart filled with plants. That's Digwell for you. Anna says, just crazy. Scott says, expensive greenhouse you have there about Digwell's car. Stuart says the farmers are not the problem, the supermarkets are. They tell the farmers what they're going to pay. It's take it or leave it. For example, the farmer gets less for the milk than they did 10 years ago. Yeah, exactly. And it costs more to buy the milk as well these days. Lots of people laughing at the jokes. Toby String, oh, Richard, you were after tiny pots in Lidl this week. They were selling tiny pots if you have one near you. Yeah, I'll have a look in there at some point. A few people have said about that, actually. If they're used right, they can save a fortune in electric bills. I dehydrate my herbs and chilies and tomatoes in mine. That's a good idea for an air fryer. Can I have a pint of what you're on? I will send you a couple of photos. Please do. Please do. We love photos here. They add ethanol to petrol here too, probably shipped to the US. Right, let's go, because this is a rant that we're coming to the end of the show, but I want to get this rant out and see your thoughts on it. Okay, I thought I'd sit in the shade and have a bit of a rant about something today. As you know, it's time for Richard's rant. Unfortunately, I sat in the shade because it's quite hot outside, and I've realised I'm a bit in the shade as well, but that's neither here nor there. Let's just get this done. So what am I ranting about this week? Well, this rant comes from a conversation I've had with a member of our audience. I'm going to keep them anonymous. They didn't mind me using their name, but I think because of the nature of what's involved, it's best we keep it anonymous. Now, what person mentioned is that when they took on their allotment, they paid an extra £50 to go into a big pool should something go wrong with the water borehole system that they have on their allotment, which is where they get all the water from. He was quite happy to do that, as were many of the other allotment holders. Well, this £50 went into a big puddle of water. That's not quite right. It went into a big pool with everyone else's, and that money has been lost. The person who originally took it has moved on. More people have came into his place and moved on, but that money has now been lost. And the general consensus is that everyone on the allotment is happy to pay again. Well, I'm sorry, I would not be happy to pay again. That just says to me that somebody's fiddling the system, taking everybody's money. I would not be able to trust them not to do it again. And I think it's very, very wrong. Now, I believe this allotment site is run by a council, so the council has something to be at fault for as well. But more importantly, it's just a bad mismanagement. I see it as being fraud. If somebody has taken somebody else's money, that's not right. Now, I don't know about you. Would you be happy to then go along and pay another £50, or would you be fighting your corner as well? I know I would be fighting my corner, because I certainly do think it's very, very wrong. Let me know in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. So would you fight the corner if your £50 deposit that you paid got lost? Not just yours, but everybody on your allotment site. I know we've only got a couple of minutes to go, but we're going to end this on this rant. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? If we're going to go over time on this, then so be it. Turbo Stream says to Idaho Garden Gal, they add ethanol to petrol here too, probably shipped from the U. Oh, I think I read that one. Beto says time to water the newly planted tomatoes greenhouses that went off the max minimum thermometer today. It has been warm. It has been warm. Digwell says anything over 35C is dangerous to tomatoes, so be careful, buddy. 35C is quite easy to get in a greenhouse, isn't it? Digwell says once bitten, twice shy, but there should be a legal contract in place to start with. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is very true. Idaho says add ethanol. Petrol is crap in your engine. Pay more for non-ethanol. The engine lasts longer. People say too expensive, but my car lasted 22 years. We'll probably be driving, but some engine T-bones me. Yeah, I mean, again, I come back, I'm no mechanic, but I can't see ethanol being a good thing. The same as what's the stuff they add to diesel now? Apparently it makes the miles per gallon worse. AdBlue they add to diesel. The police need to be involved, says Rob. I have my thoughts exactly. Sounds like fraud, Richard. Maybe the police should be involved, says Andrew. Absolutely. Turbo theft, pure and simple. Absolutely. Stuart Jackson, if you owed the council money, they would want it back. So I would not pay out again. To be fair, it's not the council. It was a separate thing. But council are involved. Kate says absolute fraud. Absolutely. I think it's like to do with an allotment committee. I'll put it like that. I think that's the best way to describe it. An allotment committee, not the council. Digwell says bad here for older garden machinery that is left lying around as the water content causes corrosion. Apparently, it's actually raining, Amanda's just said. So we have finally got rain. We have finally. Apparently, it's like a monsoon. So we've got a news alert. We've got rain. Oh, I've left my tripod outside. Idaho says, yes, Digwell, have to buy non-ethanol. Scott says, I'm going to look into it, but I don't think it is right and don't see why others think it is. Absolutely. It is in all petrol, mate. E10 is ethanol. Yeah. I know it's all added and what have you. I was thinking about AdBlue as well, isn't it? They've made that. They add that to newer diesel cars and diesel engines, where you have to add it in a separate tank, and it's made the MPG worse. Andrew says, when we distill plum brandy here, we need to discard the first half litre since that contains the ethanol. Not good to drink. No, I can't see ethanol being good to drink at all. Rob says, we not got rain forecast for another 2 weeks. Neither did we, but I think it's a thunderstorm coming in, because I keep getting thunderstorm warnings come up on the computer. So I'll be glad for it. I am glad for it, though. Turbo Stream says, breaking news, it's still bone dry in Birmingham. And Idaho, well, non-ethanol is available here. AdBlue just reduces emissions. Yeah, but I believe, I don't know how true it is. Again, I'm no expert, but it also has been known to cause worse fuel economy and make your fuel economy worse. So I'm told. So the guys at work tell me. I don't know on that. Toby Clark over on Instagram says, been replacing and painting my scaffold board raised beds today. My back is now killing me, but well worth it. Great work there. Right, it is now into overtime. I'm going to leave you with that rant. I think you're all as angry as I am about it, because it is a bad thing. We will have to consider what happens in the future. So next Sunday at 6, as I said, we're going to be talking about kids gardening. I know that may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I want to find out your stories and whether you gardened as a kid and what it was. And the reason for that is, as I said, I'm not in the studio next week. I'm in a hotel room. We're going to be joined by Lee, because we start a week of traveling the country to get 10,000 children gardening. There's not going to be any missions or any cooking next week, because I'm just not going to have the time to put everything together. I've got to leave here Sunday morning, drive up to Essex, and then drive up to Derby, Nottingham, somewhere like that, near an airport that way, for our first night. So we're ready to go in the first morning. So I'm losing a day, basically. Not going to have time, but we will bring them back the following week nonetheless. But next week, kids gardening. If you've got any photos, any videos you want to share, we would really appreciate them. Lee Connolly, I think, will be joining me. Most likely will be joining me, Skinny Jean Gardener. So there'll be lots of chat going on with this very subject. Maybe even his brother. Anyway, right, you take care, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. Hope you've enjoyed the chat. Hope you're thinking more about mulching or what you're going to do with a mulch. Until next time, please take care.